This is the Triumph Tiger Sport 800, new for 2025, and following on from the already very well received Tiger Sport 660. So does more power, more spec, and to be fair, more price, necessarily lead to a better bike when it comes to sports touring? Well, in this video, we'll go through everything that I've learnt about it from borrowing this press bike for the past 2 weeks, with all of the pros and cons to find out. But before we get started, a massive thanks to Louis Moto for supporting the channel and making videos like this one possible. Louis Moto are one of the biggest online retailers in Europe, but they also ship to the UK with fast shipping and easy returns. Not only do they stock a huge range of the biggest brands in biking, but also a selection of their own in-house products that I think offer excellent value for money. Over the past couple of years, we've tested out plenty of their clothing and helmets, but for this particular video, I loaded the Tiger up with some of their moto-detail branded soft luggage. The price point on both is exceptional, and with the waterproof roll bag on the back, I was able to stash my wet weather gear for a couple of long motorway runs I did to test out the bike's touring capabilities. That left the top box and the side cases free to store all my camera gear, and the tank bag is also super useful with a clear pocket on top for your phone or maps, and a USB entry point up at the front so you can keep your devices juiced up. Like I say, all their stuff is well priced and the quality in my experience has been great, so do check out the links down in the description below to find out more. So let's kick off with the engine, and as you may have guessed from the name, it's an 800 with an inline triple that of course has a very similar feel to it to the 660 version. Certainly at low to middling speeds, you've got that nice torquey mid-range that you get with a triple, the smoothness that makes it pleasant to ride, and also a very nice throttle delivery which is super easy to control, and so it's a very practical bike in that regard. Thing is though, where it does differ from the 660 is with that extra peak power at the top owing to the extra capacity, and so as opposed to about 80 horsepower, this makes 113 peak at 10,750 RPM, and peak torque of course is up a little bit as well at 84 Newton meters at 8,500 RPM. So yeah, as you may imagine, that means far brisker acceleration and more of a sense of like entertainment and sportiness. You know, it'll power wheelie in second gear quite easily, especially in the sport mode, which gives it that directness on the throttle. So clearly, in terms of fun, if you like to ride quicker, it does that quite a bit better. But I think also if you're looking for a bike to tour on, perhaps 2-up and with luggage, then it just has that extra punch in reserve for those motorway speeds overtakes, especially when you're loaded up. And so you could consider it the extra power to be a bit of a practicality as well. Now, fuel economy and range are also decent, with an 18.6 litre tank that's a couple of litres bigger than the 660s. Triumph claim 4.7 litres per 100 kilometres, which is about 60 UK miles per gallon, and in my experience of riding the bike, it's definitely achievable if you stick to 70-ish on the motorway. That would give you a range of about 400 kilometres or 250 miles, but even if you're thrashing it a bit and carrying some speed on the motorway, well, I found you can average between 50 and 55 miles per gallon, and so you should still be good for between 150 and 200 miles. Genuinely, there's not a great deal to dislike about this engine, although if I had to be picky for the sake of this review, well, I would say there's a little bit of fizziness through the bars in terms of the vibes, especially when you start to push the engine a bit. And so while if you're happy to sit at 60 or 70, it might be a non-issue, well, if you're someone who likes to ride a bit quicker than that, then maybe a quick demo to see if it bothers you. Then the quick shifter or the gear shift feels a little bit spongy compared to, some of their other bikes like a street triple, for example. And it's something I've also noticed on like the 660s as well when I had a Trident. I think it can possibly be forgiven for getting the quick shifter fitted as standard on an £11,000 bike, but it just doesn't have that crisp, satisfying snick that you get with, tauter, more premium perhaps, gear shifts. But I think, like I say, I'm nitpicking a little bit there. Neither of those things would realistically bother me if I owned one of these. And my overall sort of lasting impression of the engine is one that's a lot of fun, can carry you at speed quickly and comfortably, and also has that great triple soundtrack, which I'm a massive fan of. Now in terms of the chassis spec, it's a steel frame, suspended on adjustable Showa suspension with the upside down fork at the front and monoshock at the rear. Brakes are Triumph branded with a pair of 4-piston radially mounted calipers up front on 310mm discs, and you've got cast aluminium wheels with a 17-incher front and rear shod with Michelin's excellent Road 5s. I think what's impressed me about it though is I was potentially expecting it to feel a touch more cumbersome perhaps than the 660, and maybe sacrifice, because of the bigger nature of it, some of the agility that I think made that bike really good. But actually it's really impressed me out on the road. It feels very similar in terms of how easy it is to ride, and that's partly down to the fact that it's only 7 kilograms heavier, which I don't think is, you know, particularly substantial. It still comes in at 214 kilograms fully fueled up, and then also, you know, it's got the same geometry pretty much as the 660. There's a couple of minor differences, but ultimately it's set up to handle the same. Out on the road, it's quick to turn, it feels fun to ride. The brakes are decent too, if not, you know, sports bike sharp. And I think, you know, I find these tall sports tourers really enjoyable on the road, just as an antidote, I guess, to the popularity of adventure bikes. It's got the tallness, which gives you a commanding stance. It's got that practicality to it, but with the right size wheels and also, you know, good sports touring rubber, you've got something that's really not that far off, you know, a sporty naked in terms of the handling. And so while it can do the motorway stuff and the more boring work, when you do peel off onto a back road, you can really get stuck in and enjoy this bike. As for the ride quality, well, you know, it does feel fairly firm and sporty, but I never really found it uncomfortable. And of course, versus the 660, you've got the extra adjustability here with compression and rebound on the fork and preload and rebound on the shock. So you can get it more dialed into your taste, which I think is probably going to be appealing to slightly more experienced riders. And it's also good to see that they've carried over the remote preload adjuster, which doesn't require any tools. If you are speccing it up with luggage, sometimes carrying a passenger, sometimes not, then this for me is one of the most important features on a bike that is sometimes frustratingly missing. So yeah, the riding dynamics get a big tick from me, and it's sort of on the more sporty side of the sports touring spectrum. Now on to the ergonomics and comfort, and this bike sits a little bit taller than your average road bike with 150mm of travel on both the fork and shock. That means the seat is at 835mm, which I would call fairly moderate, being neither adventure bike tall nor naked bike low. For me, at 5'9" or 175cm, combined with the narrowness of the front of the saddle, I could easily get both feet down and almost flat-foot it. And then on the move, I found the foot pegs to be in a slightly forward position, which makes it very comfy, and the bars sat back a little more than a naked, so your back angle is nice and straight. Shorter riders though might want to look at the low seat accessory, costing 176 quid, which takes 25mm off the seat height for a very accessible 810mm. In terms of the wind protection, well, there's a little more bodywork than the 660 and also some extra deflectors down by the bottom of the windscreen, and so there is a little more cover from the elements, although it's perhaps not quite as comprehensive as something like the Honda NT1100, which I reviewed recently, which is a less sporty bike, but also very snug. The Tiger is pretty good, especially at around 60 or 70 miles per hour, but I did find once you started to push beyond that, well, there is quite a bit of buffeting. It is still sustainable for a few hours on the motorway, but just don't expect full tourer levels of quietness and warmth. Now, if I was to be a bit fussy, I do wish this windscreen was a little easier to adjust. When you're on the go, it's easy enough to push down, but when you want to pull it back up, you can have to pull upwards as opposed to towards you, and it just feels a little bit tricky when you're trying to concentrate on the road ahead. An example of a bike that nails it is the Multistrada V2 that I was riding last week, that just has a little tab that you can press down to get the screen down and then pull up to pull it back up, and it just feels totally intuitive and like it's never, you know, particularly a problem. Admittedly though, you know, Ducati have got 15 or 16 grand to build that bike with, whereas this comes in at 11, and it's probably one of those things that you do get the hang of eventually. I would also be looking to probably spec up the handguards. This press bike has the heated grips accessory, but I would say largely there's not much point unless you've got handguards. And so while it does get these extra deflectors down here versus the 660 that do push a little bit of air away from your hands, I'd probably be budgeting a little bit extra just to get those handguards and really complete the wind protection package. Generally though, I'd say it's decent, and because it's more sporty than it is touring, it can be perhaps forgiven for being a little bit slim. Now I will say I'm quite grateful to get the luggage on this press bike. It's not all that common, but of course it's a big part of what this bike's about, and so it's been good to be able to test them out. As you can see, you can get 3-piece luggage. They're all plastic. They tie in with the ignition key, of course, being the official accessory, and you can color match them. So while these look fairly plain with the black infills, there is a yellow bike, a blue bike, and a grey one as well. The side cases, well, I don't find this sort of contoured shape quite as practical, let's say, as the more squared off rectangular metal luggage that you'll typically find with an adventure bike, but they do both take a full face helmet, which I think is a big deal for most people. And so from that perspective, I guess they do their job. But what I really do like is this rather large top case, just because it gives you a much more flexible space, and so you can easily get a backpack in there that's then quick to take out and sling on your back. For me, it's generally a camera bag, but of course if you're commuting or if you've got that weekend away, then it is handy to have something that you don't have to work too hard with in order to fit a bag in. On top of that, I will say I do like the fact that this bike is rackless, and so if you do want to take the cases off, then it leaves the bike looking nice and clean and sporty without some big metal rails here. From a tech perspective, well, I know from the comments on our videos that not everyone is a huge fan of this split digital dash with an inverted LCD at the top and a small TFT at the bottom. I think the perception is it's a bit cheap compared to a full TFT, but having owned a bike with this dash and also tried out plenty of their others that use it, well, I will say out on the road, it's really very easy to read, and the TFT, despite being small, is well laid out and easy to navigate. To me, it feels like the bike is spec'd up to have everything you need for this price point, but nothing more that would push up the price unnecessarily. There are 3 riding modes, for example, of rain, road and sport, but nothing more extensive than that, nor multiple custom slots where you can roll your own. The traction control and ABS are lean sensitive, but there's no engine braking control or launch control that I would say would be overkill for this sort of bike. The cruise control is a single button, so less nuanced than the more advanced systems where you can nudge the speed up and down, but it is there and it does do the job. And to be fair, you get the quick shifter and the connectivity features all thrown in as well, without having to pay extra as accessories. For 11 grand, I think it's pretty good, and while I do agree a big TFT would look better if they could afford to fit one, well still, if the split dash is putting you off demoing one, then I'd at least say go and give it a proper try, rather than just making your mind up from the pictures on the internet. Now looks are always going to be a little bit subjective, but I will say I think out of the immediate competition, this is probably the best looking of the bunch. It has some of the best bits of the 660 with that kind of headlight shape that I think looks quite aggressive at the front, but then just bulks it out a bit with a bigger tank and a little bit of extra bodywork, and I think that just makes it look a little more substantial and impressive. Then you've also got the side-mounted silencer, which is a definite improvement to the underbelly exhaust on the 660, and you can also, if you want a bit more bling, swap that out for the official Akrapovic accessory. In terms of the build quality and finish though, well, it does feel like it has a lot in common with the 660, which it does, and so perhaps it's not quite as premium as something like a Tiger 900, which is another couple of grand up. It's largely plastic. It's a plastic tank cover, for example. The dash wobbles a bit when you're riding along, and just some little things like the brake lever's adjustable, but the clutch lever isn't. Then again though, for £11,000 it does pack a heck of a lot of features, and so naturally there will be a little bit of a compromise somewhere, but I think for the money, overall you have to say it's a good looking bike. So lots of good stuff about this bike, but what else on the market might you consider? Well, of course I think plenty of shoppers will be wondering whether to get this or the 660 version, and I will say, if you're just riding solo, or you don't do much distance work, or maybe you're just not that mad about going fast, then of course it's worth a look, as you could save yourself a few grand. In the other direction, you could spend a little bit more in the Triumph lineup and get a Tiger 900 GT, which gives you a bit more of that adventure bike versatility while still being fairly road and touring focused. I will say though, it's not as lively and fun when it comes to quicker riding as this new 800. Elsewhere, like I say, I recently rode the Honda NT1100, which starts at more like 12 grand, And again, it's not as sporty as the Tiger Sport, but it is a little smoother, it gets the luggage as standard, and also there's that extra wind protection that I mentioned earlier, so perhaps one to look at for those who are more practically minded. The closest competitors, though, have to be the twin-powered F900XR from BMW and the Tracer 9 from Yamaha, which is also an inline triple. Each has its advantages here and there, and they're all good choices, but I'd say specifically for the Triumph, the features that make it stand out to me are the handling, which is really engaging, the looks, which are probably the best of the three, and also all the tech and features that are fitted as standard, which I would say makes it look like the best value for money.
So look, with all that in mind, well, who should consider a Tiger Sport 800? I think if you like the look of the 660 but potentially thought it might be a bit underpowered for your purposes, then this is pretty much all your dreams answered, because it offers a lot of the same practicality, ease of use, the good looks, the decent value for money, but just with that substantial power boost that makes it a lot more lively. If you're just more broadly shopping though on the sports touring market, then I'd absolutely recommend sticking this one on your shortlist, with it being a brilliant all-rounder for the money that could equally be, you know, the workhorse commuter, the weekend tourer, or perhaps the Sunday joy machine. That versatility means you're almost certainly going to get your value for money out of it, and so if you're even half considering one, I'd definitely recommend booking yourself in for a demo.
As always, I'd love to know what you think of the bike, so do let me know down in the comments below, and I'll leave our selection of the other best new tourers on the market for 2025 on the screen now so you can give it a watch if you missed it. Do hit subscribe for more of the latest motorcycle news and reviews right here on MOTOBOB, and massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.